What's up, people? Look at it. The garden is coming along. See the progress. The mulch is down. I told you I was going to put some center block raised beds over to the side over here and down there, but that wasn't in the budget. So we're going to do all the containers that I have. Those black containers over there are the ones that I was telling you guys about in the video, the previous video. Great deal on those. Those black containers down there are the Tough Totes. I love them. They're from they're the HDX Home Depot brand. It's the same one that I use for my compost bin right there, and that has dealt with the elements for multiple winters, and it's holding up. They don't bulge. I love them. But that's not what I wanted to talk to you guys primarily about. Today I was going to talk to you guys about counting the cost of filling your raised bed. So a lot of people talk about the raised bed, and you see people on YouTube filling them, but I wanted to explain to you guys, especially you newbies, what goes in to filling your raised bed. First of all, when you are going to fill a raised bed up, you need to know first how many cubic feet actually would fill that thing up. And there's a calculation that you can do to actually do that. So I always recommend new people start with a 4x4. That's 4 wide by 4 long. So a 4x4 square raised bed. That does not take in consideration the depth though. So these, for example, are 9 inches deep, right? Some people like 10 inches or 12 inches when they're building their raised bed. You'll see that. Well, when you talk about how deep they are, that's going to also determine how much soil you're putting in. And that's also going to increase the cost of filling. So I'm going to put some links down below. I'm going to put a link down below of a calculator that'll tell you exactly how much cubic feet you're going to need when you build your raised bed. So, but I did my calculation, and I am supposed to fill these with 12. This is 12 cubic feet to fill this. Okay, so that's a 4x4, 9 inches deep, 12 cubic feet. So when you go to your garden stores and you're looking at the bags of compost and everything like that, on the bottom it might say 1 cubic foot, 2 cubic foot, 0.75 cubic feet, like those garden soil green Miracle Grows over there. All of that is what you're adding up. You're adding up, okay, if this is going to be, if I got to get to 12, how do I best do that? When you're doing a raised bed, you can get away with some cheap stuff, which is garden soil, which you'll find. Garden soil is not potting soil. Potting soil is made to go into containers. Garden soil is actually made to go into your native ground, and it will also work when you're doing a raised bed. So don't get those confused. Don't look at them and say they're on sale, so let me get garden soil when you're doing container garden. Putting that in the containers is going to cause you problems unless you actually do something to make this garden soil into a compatible potting soil to go into your stuff. But when you're putting it in the ground, it's absolutely fine. So let me tell you, you guys know I talk to you guys a lot. If you followed me for a while, I talk about square foot gardening. All the pros that you guys watch on YouTube who do raised beds, they all have some kind of sense of using square foot gardening method, whether or not they say it or not, but most of them use that. And they use a blend, a really good blend of stuff that we like to put in our raised bed. Now, the blend that we like to put in consists of 3 main ingredients. Okay, the first ingredient is your nutrient ingredient. Nutrient ingredient is going to include your composts, your manures, your garden soils would go into that category, as well as topsoil will go into that category. Even though topsoil doesn't really have much nutrition, that still would fall in that same category. So if you look at what I have here, going on, this black cow manure, the mushroom compost, the topsoil, the this is called lobster compost. I've never used this stuff before, but it's in my area all over the place, and people swear by it. So I just picked up some lobster compost and the Miracle Grow garden soil, which was on sale, $2 a bag. So I definitely, that's why you see so much of that over there. So all of those go into my nutrient base. That's one of the nutrient components. If you made your own compost or stuff like that, or if you had bags of what are those things called? Worm castings. Those things are part of your nutrient ingredient. The second level of ingredients that we like to add is our water retention level. And so that ingredient from this level, I don't know if you guys can see me, but let me just make sure you guys can see this. Peat moss will be included in something like that. Peat moss, or the new thing everybody's using is cocoa core or cocoa coir. Those things, what these do, they don't add necessarily nutrition, but what they do add is the ability. These things soak up water like a sponge. So what they do is they hold on to the moisture. Your compost and stuff like that will hold moisture as well, but these hold on to moisture, but they also kind of break up the compost so that the compost don't get too hard, and your soils, your topsoil, they don't get too hard and too rocky. That's what you want when you're in your raised beds. We don't want hard, rocky stuff. We want it to be nice and fluffy. So these keep them nice and fluffy, but they also hold on to your moisture so that you don't have to water all the time, or you don't have to water as much. So that's the one level, your peat moss and your cocoa coir. A lot of people like the cocoa coir. Cocoa coir is much more expensive. So for example, this is 3 cubic feet here. Cocoa coir, you can get a big block that will expand to 3 cubic feet. This thing here costs around $10. This all depends on where you live, but you're going to be, between $10 and $12 or $9 and $12 for 3 cubic feet of peat moss. If you do that same thing in the coconut coir, you're talking between $18 and $22 for that. Many people like it because it's a renewable source. It's better for the environment basically, but it's not better for my pockets. So until it gets better for my pockets, unfortunately, and I hate to say it like this, but until it gets better for my pockets, I got to go with the peat moss. All right. So the third level, the third ingredient, what you need is drainage. Okay. So I have here, and I forgot to get it out my garage. I also have vermiculite. Okay, so the drainage level would be your vermiculite, which is premium, your perlite, which would be middle level, and then the poor man like me will go with sand. Sand will do the same thing as far as the drainage. Sand will keep it from compacting, your soil from compacting, but it will also allow stuff to drain. Now what happens is sand will actually drain more, right? So when you're using stuff like this, I don't like to use a whole lot of sand. And if you're doing something like that, you got to make sure you have enough peat moss, because if your stuff drains too much, then you have to keep watering it, right? So you got to be careful when you're using sand. I'm actually using sand and vermiculite. So what I'm doing is, because vermiculite costs so much, I don't want to use so much vermiculite. So I'm actually going to use half of the vermiculite I would normally use and use the other half with sand. So vermiculite what makes it premium is because it does allow for drainage, but it also holds on to vermiculite holds on to water a little bit, so it drains, but it doesn't drain all the way, so that it doesn't allow your stuff to get soggy, but it also doesn't drain so fast that you have to keep watering. So that's what makes it premium. Perlite doesn't hold on to water a lot, but it does allow for the drainage, and it also does break up the soil, so that you could so that it doesn't compact and everything like that, and it drains, but it doesn't drain as fast as your sand. So your perlite is a good middle of the road if you don't want to spend that much. Sand is just going to be purely for aiding into stop the compaction, but it's just draining. It's going to, you pour water on the sand and it's just going through. So that's why these other ingredients like the compost and the peat mosses, they're going to hold on so that when the stuff drains through this sand, it's not going to drain too fast. Okay. Now people can make up their own formulas or percentages of how much of each. Technically, a third of each would be best. I don't normally do a third of each. Like I said, from the time when I first started, I did do a third of each, but I tried some different formulas, and the formula that I actually like is 50% nutrition level, 25% peat moss and cocoa coir, or the water retention level, and 25% of the drainage level. Those things balance out pretty well for me, and I never had an issue with having to always water a whole lot, and I like having more nutrition in my stuff. So how you would calculate that, so for example, I have 12 to fill, right? So I would say this would be 12 cubic feet to fill that. I would do 6 cubic feet is going to be my nutrition level, right? So with the bags of soil, with the different types of compost and stuff like that, I mix them up and get multiple, at least three or four different types of compost, right? Because you're going to get different types of nutrition from different things, all that to add up to at least 6 cubic feet. Then we go into the rest. So I'm gonna do 3 cubic feet then with the peat moss, and then I'm gonna do a 3 cubic feet of the sand and the vermiculite mix. Is going to come out to about 3 cubic feet. So that's kind of how I do it. Again, this is just for raised beds. If you're doing in-ground, you wouldn't need hardly any of these, except it'll be good to add the compost into your in-ground. But counting the cost, you got to count the cost and see when things go on sale. If you know you're going to do primarily this, so when I saw that those garden soils was on sale for $2, I went immediately online and paid for them online just in case I didn't get there in time to book it. And then I went and just looked at other ones that I like. Like I love this black cow stuff. I've been using this since I started. And mushroom compost I used when I first started, but this is a different brand of mushroom compost. And again, that lobster compost, it's supposed to be coming from the what it says, from the shores of Maine or something like that, and it's supposed to be like compost that comes by the riverbeds or whatever like that. So, you know, I guess it'll have some extra minerals and stuff like that in there. I'll try it. And the topsoil, the only real reason I use this topsoil is, and this is very important, guys, when you're filling your raised beds, you need to make sure that your raised beds are level. Okay, so I got a level. I'm going to be putting on here to make sure that they're level. You can see that my there's a slight grade on my my land here. So I have to make sure that these raised beds are raised up so that they're flat enough. So what happens is if I left it like this, where it's slanted down like this, when I would water or when it would rain, all the water would drain down here. And what'll happen is either this side will get too much water and it'll be waterlogged, and that side doesn't get enough water, or this may just get a lot of the water and all your healthy plants will be over here and all your plants up there will be struggling. So you don't want to do that. So you want to even it so that when it rains, when you're watering, everything that's in that bed gets even. So what I like to do is buy some cheap topsoil, and what I do is push the topsoil underneath the bed to kind of get it to where it needs to be. So I buy the cheapest topsoil I can find, and that's literally all I use it for, is to put it in. And then once I'm done evening everything out, if there's some left, I just mix it in with the rest of the stuff. It's not going to hurt anything when it's mixed up with the rest of the stuff. So that's about it. So I just wanted to tell you guys what's going on. You see the vision coming along. I got decorations. I got all kinds of things that need to come in here. And so I'm gonna get this done. Today was a 83-degree day, and I gotta get it in because tomorrow's gonna drop down to 45. Go figure. So again, beginner gardeners, it's possible. Get the garden. Peace.